Hello, I'm Ben Spencer, Head of Programme at St George's, Bristol. You're about to listen to one of our listening room sessions recorded a few months ago in our glass studio. These are informal sessions where artists of all kinds present fresh material and talk a little about their creative process. We hope you enjoy it and look forward to welcoming you back to St George's and future listening room sessions when we reopen.
Hello, how are we all doing? It's a bit rainy outside, so it's nice to be in here. It's nice and warm and cozy. We're going to be in for a really lovely treat. We've got an amazing artist that's going to be performing for us today. And this is part of a massive set of more events coming up from the listening room all of this autumn. So do check out the rest of the events that are coming up as well. So the next artist that's going to come and perform for us today, she's been championed by Giles Peterson, and she's been described by BBC Radio as unpredictable and beguiling. So can everyone please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Kayla Painter, everyone. That was really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
It's really, your music really takes you to a very different space. Is that, do you think your music is a reflection of a part of yourself, or is it like alter ego of yourself when you make your music?
I think when I perform, I feel like it's an alter ego, because I think that separation between myself and my usual self and performing it needs to be different, because otherwise I get too nervous. So it's good to have a different character, I suppose, for the stage space. When I'm writing, I think it's more just an expression of communication, like from my own self, my own emotions, and yeah. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it completely does.
Okay.
You did I had a look at some of your EPs and releases, and in a lot of them you do talk about your identity and how it reflects in your music. Is that really important for you to include in there? How does it come out into the sounds of your songs?
Yeah, I think it is really important, and for me, and I think the way that I represent that in sound is like through creating like soundscapes that are kind of, I don't know, how I might feel about something, or how the kind of person I am, the sort of things I like to do, you know, the kind of solitary time that I like, that kind of thing. It kind of comes into the writing in terms of how I compose. But then also more obviously, there are found sounds in my music which might be personal, but they might just be random as well, like things that I like the sound of, or things I've come across that sound nice, rather than, you know, not every sound has a real emotional connection, but it's more like the quality of it. But yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there like solitary time, and your music does feel very kind of somber and solitary. Is this like an intentional thing, or is it just the kind of space that is within you?
I think it's already there, and it's a place for that to go. And I think, I think that is probably right. I'm an introvert. I'm a massive introvert, and I think that is also part of that. Yeah.
Well, your EP that came out in 2018, Cannibals at Sea, it definitely felt like you took that sort of introvertedness and solitary sort of feeling and identity to another deeper level. And you said it massively explored your identity again and growing up. Can you just tell us a bit more about what was behind that EP?
Yeah, sure. So Cannibals at Sea was about my mixed heritage. So my mum's from Fiji and my dad is from Southampton, so they're like very culturally different. Probably couldn't be more different. So growing up in a house of music, of a culture clash of, you know, from my dad's side and my mum's side was kind of interesting. And I think that Cannibals at Sea was an exploration around my identity with those two cultures, but also how that can be, you know, how that can be celebrated, but also how that can be quite difficult, I suppose. So like they're from totally different worlds. And so that means we also have half of our family very, very far away a lot of the time. And yeah, one side of my family is so the Fijian side were very, very poor, and they grew up without luxuries like shoes and clothes, you know, really kind of basic living. And then my dad's side is, you know, working class Southampton, but it's still very, very different. And the sort of, when my family left Fiji and some of them moved to Southampton, and that's when I met my dad, it was a real struggle for them kind of coming to Southampton and like trying to fit into a completely different culture. And so I guess like through the stories I've been told, it was more an interpretation of that, you know, and me wanting to express something as a response to that. It sounds really, really pretentious, but I guess it's just sometimes where you get inspiration from can sound a bit pretentious, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess we all draw inspiration from our environment, right, and things that we've lived through in our experiences. I'm interested to know, were you making music when you were younger as well at that time, or was it something that was kind of on the periphery?
Yeah, no, I wasn't really making it when I was younger, but my mum's very creative, and my dad's really into music, so I think that's kind of where I draw both those things from. But I wasn't particularly like interested in making music when I was a child. I liked listening to it, and I liked making things like painting and, you know, art in that kind of way. So I think perhaps that's why my music has a massive visual kind of element to it as well, because I think in that way sometimes. So yeah.
Well, your music is so descriptive. Like when you listen to Kayla's music, it kind of paints an image almost. It's like sitting down and listening to a painting, if that's possible. So when you actually come up with the visual element to your live sets, do you make it to the music, or is it kind of a separate thing that's married to the music?
It depends really, because I work with Jason Baker for the visual side that people have seen with the two big screens, the kind of AV thing that I do. That is often designed by conversation with Jason really over long periods of time. So we share things all the time. We share images, videos, things we like the look of, ideas. I share music with him as well and say I'm thinking more this kind of style now. And he'll respond to that. But it's very much an ongoing discussion. However, when I'm creating, I'm always thinking visually. So sometimes I'll go to him and say, I really think, you know, this kind of texture or this kind of colour would work with this track. And we might work with that. We might try it. It might not work. It might, you know, it's all trial and error. But it's a great process. I really enjoy it.
I came to see you, I think it was at the Colston Hall, and you performed in one of the side rooms, and you had this amazing... it was like an opaque fabric sort of all around you, and it was really amazing, and it really does add to kind of like the texture of the music as you described. Does the audio visual element change every time you do a set, or are they specific to sort of different things?
Much like the tracks really. The tracks exist and there are sounds that go with those tracks, so the visuals exist for those tracks, but it's live in that it's improvised. So it's sort of improvised around a theme. So each track has a theme or a visual element, and then everything that you see live is on top of that. So it's kind of a bit of both, really.
Wicked. Well, tell us a bit more about the tracks that you just played.
Okay, so I played 4 tracks. The third one was the new one, which just came out on vinyl, which is the first time I've actually played it live, so it's really nice to hear it in here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was the one with the live drums, which I wrote with my friend, who's an incredible drummer. And I feel really weird like playing live drums on a laptop, because obviously I would like the live drummer to be here. It's not always possible to do that, you know, with budget and location and logistics. But it was really nice to have that, you know, play that and share that with people, because it's so far only existed on vinyl and on Spotify. So it's nice to have that in an actual room and have people hear it. So that was new for me to play today. And then I had so I opened with the more ambient drones, which is like an older track which I really love playing live. It's a great introduction to what I do. And I'm trying to think what else I've played. The last track, Canopsia, has this amazing violin playing. And again, I was very lucky to work with somebody who's just an incredible violin player. And I gave them a brief, and I sent them the track, and they sent me some stuff back. And it was just brilliant. And it was all done online, you know, email. We didn't sit in a room together, but I'm not sure you would notice that, because I think she interpreted the brief so well. And then I got to mix and work with these amazing strings. It was a real pleasure. So yeah.
So you weren't in the same room with each other?
Nope.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And it all comes together so well. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a lot of I heard like speaking in there and some other sounds. Where do you actually get most of your sounds from?
It's such a variety of places. So some things I record at home, some things just when I'm out and about, like literally using my phone, using an iPhone voice recorder to capture some things. So there's definitely a DIY element there. It's not high production value in that sense, but I think that adds to the character of the tracks to have sort of lower quality samples mixed with perhaps software synths, which sound very, very different. So yeah, it could be anywhere really. I could be capturing stuff like when I'm just doing shopping or when I'm just at home in the kitchen. Like it's very voices. Like some of that stuff's quite important. It's kind of from conversations or moments where I thought this is something is interesting here in the room. I'm going to record this. I don't tell anybody. And it's usually family, so it's okay. I tell them afterwards. But Actually, one of the tracks I play in a minute has that in it. So yeah, sometimes those conversations are really, really nice. Like one of the tracks that I play, that I think it's the third track in a minute. It's got my Fijian gran talking on it, and she's always talking about superstition and all these kind of crazy things. And I managed to capture this moment where she was talking about. I can't even really explain it. You'll hear it anyway and see what you make of it.
Well, a lot of your music that's come out this year, the titles allude to something quite magical. They've got quite sort of mysterious and magical titles. So does that come from your grandmother?
Yeah, quite possibly. She's so superstitious. And the Fijian superstitions are, I don't know if some of it's just made up, if she's made it up, or if it's like a case of people passing things down through generations, where she can't read or write, so everything is verbal. And it would have been with her mum as well, and her mum. So yeah, I think some of that imagination and magic and superstition comes from that, for sure, yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to hear some more music. Everyone, can you please put your hands together for Kayla Painter?
No, you keep holding the pounds. Keep holding the pounds. I had a button. So, what would you like today? £20, please.
and all in there.
But only if they die in March.
No, anytime, you just have to look at the book, she was telling me. She said, I said, if anything happened to me, what's going to happen? Nobody knows anything. I don't want to know.
So if it happens to her, we've got to make there it goes.
No, you don't make. No, that's just make it. But my sister, she's way out there.
I don't think I'm going to look at sellotape in the same way ever again. I really like how you juxtapose synthetic sounds with organic sounds. How do you decide, I'm going to just pick up a sellotape and just use it for my set today? Or is it kind of like, is it really planned, or is it quite like a last minute thing?
Well, with the parcel tape, the brown tape, it was part of that track, that last track. In fact, it was what the last track was. It was entirely made out of parcel tape. And I sent it to a load of labels, and they were like, it's a bit too experimental. So, and I didn't really do anything with it. And it was a 2-minute long piece of music made entirely out of tape. And whenever I did play it to people, like students or friends, they were really interested in it. I thought it was such a shame to just not do anything with it. So then I started playing it live, and it's morphed from being a live performance with just tape to now being a track which features the tape, in it. So that track, the top line, is just what the original recording was. It took me hours to make it, because every single pitch is a different, either a different moment of recording, or it's a specific bit of tape that's been duplicated and then pitch shifted, and that takes ages if you think about how many different sounds there are in there. So I'm glad to kind of use it, but I think when I used to play that track live without the tape, I sort of think it's a shame that people don't realise that it's parcel tape. I don't know why. Maybe because of how long I spent on it. I don't know. And I thought today, so what dictated it today was that it's a non-visual show, it's an intimate show, it's a show where it could be a lot of me looking at a laptop, so it's sort of dictated by that, actually, and maybe it's nicer for people to see the process, even if it doesn't go the way I want it to, because it's, everything gets stuck together and you have to, So.
Yeah. Well, it's really playful. It's nice to see the process that songs go through, because a lot of the time people might just hear, the end product when they come and see you perform, but they don't realise that all of these things are happening behind the scenes and making your tracks. And in that breath as well, I'm really interested to know how you actually make your songs. How do you get your songs from your mind into a live performance or a piece of recorded music?
Yeah, it's a really hard question, because I think it changes. So like with the parcel tape thing, it was quite simply that I'd been thinking about sounds, and I'd sort of thought about parcels. I thought about sellotape, I was taping something up, thinking actually there's loads of scope here to make something. So sometimes it's an idea like that. And sometimes, so once I was on a walk, and I was walking past the school, and I recorded the sound of the kids playing in the playground, and they had the chickens as well there, and they were just everything was making really interesting noises. And I went home with this about 2-minute recording of that, me walking past that and getting to my front door, getting my keys out and putting the keys in the door. And that actually then informed a whole piece of music, but it wasn't really until I got that into the software I used that I thought about what sounds might go with it. It was more that I liked the soundscape, I liked what was going on, and I thought, how can I kind of complement that with music as opposed to just atmospheric sounds? And then I suppose there's a whole nother side of it where it's like I would just be thinking about making something musical, and it comes from a musical part of my brain, like, oh, it would be cool to work with something that texture or that kind of melody. So it really does change, and then it's about then working in the studio and kind of translating it into something that other people can hear. But that process I find can be quite slow.
So I guess it's a lot more rigid than sort of organically thinking of something at home or whilst walking around and something comes to you. I guess in the studio it's a lot. Do you feel less? Is it less creative for you to be in the studio?
It depends, really. If it's going well, then it's really, really creative and it's great fun. If it's not going well and you're coming up against these barriers, I just find it torturous and I just hate it. But I suppose part of being a recording artist is that you have to get over those barriers and you have to keep going. But yeah, when I'm frustrated and I'm not able to translate what's up here into the computer or into any, onto the glockenspiel or anything, that disconnect is does feel a bit frustrating. Yeah.
I'm always really interested to know how people sort of interpret that there's like a weird moment that artists have where people have just an instance where they're like, right, there's a song in my head, it's just there, and I need to get it out somehow or write it down, and no one normally quite knows where that comes from. And I wanted to know if you experienced that and where you think that comes from for you.
So like the feeling of having something to communicate, like musically?
Yeah. Like some people have whole poems that literally just come to them in their head, or you might be sitting down and you'll be like, that is a song and I just have to get it out. It's not like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it happens less like that for me as a complete song. It's more elements, like, or a feeling. Again, it sounds a bit, but it's like, oh, I feel like this, or I feel inspired by that. So I might go on a walk or something out of Bristol. That tends to be when stuff comes to me when I'm not in a densely populated space. And that kind of thing will give me a feeling, which then is like, oh, maybe this is an idea, and then it becomes something. So I guess what I'm saying is it's more like it comes from an emotive space than like divine inspiration. Like I've got an idea of a whole song or the message I want to communicate necessarily. So yeah, I don't know. It's quite hard to articulate as well. Yeah. It's abstract. It feels very abstract.
I'm always really interested to know because everyone has really, really different answers, but that's really interesting. A lot of your songs have hidden saxophone in them, which I didn't know until the other day. So can you explain why you've chosen to have the saxophone sort of embedded in most of your songs?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because I played saxophone at school, and I like to feel like all those years of lessons were worth something. Because my parents were so disappointed when I was like, oh, I'm going to make music on a laptop. And my dad was always like, yeah, but eventually you'll be doing saxophone again. And I was like, I don't know. And eventually, well, to be fair, a couple of years ago, I did do something on the Cube where I played saxophone, and then it was on the radio, and he was like, "I'm so proud of you." I was like, "Yeah, but what about everything else?" So, I mean, it's partly like I have this instrument at my disposal, and I'm very lucky to have had the tuition to play it, even though now I only play it in a totally unconventional way. I guess sometimes it's just good to feel like I'm using some of the like wider variety of skills I have. Yeah, and it's a really nice instrument. It's very versatile if you are experimental with the way you play it, but I guess lots of instruments are. But yeah.
Well, I've read that you've taken a lot of inspiration from experimental saxophonists like Colin Stetson, who is absolutely amazing to watch. When did he come into your life, and how did you connect with his music?
I don't know when. I guess like a few years ago, when whichever album came out, it was and he was on tour and he was receiving a lot of press. I think it literally was more like it was just one of those moments where he's like, oh right, just discovering this artist because they're everywhere at the moment, and But I absolutely love what he does. It's kind of like it's that borderline between. Well, you can kind of go towards more noise and abstract kind of sound. Which I really like with him, and it's the same with like people like Niels Fromm as well. There's that whole kind of classical movement of artists that are doing things slightly outside of the kind of regular sort of boundaries that I find really interesting. Even if I don't sound like them, I find their kind of approach interesting. But also, he's just incredibly talented, and like the music he creates is amazing. But yeah,
he is amazing. Yeah. I stumbled across him unexpectedly. I was down at a festival in Birmingham 2 years ago, and as soon as I heard his music, I was like, "How is he doing it?" And he had a microphone on his neck, right, and then circular breathing, and playing lots of saxophones. Is that kind of like something you would aspire to doing with the saxophone, like using it in lots of different ways? Was it just a feature in your music? Yeah,
it's more just a feature, I think. Because I like sampling it and the sounds it makes and the sounds I can create with it. But yeah, I think that's probably the limit of it for me, because there are so many things that I feel I'd like to explore. So one of the tracks I played in the first half was all made out of sounds like in the bath. So like there's a harmonica that I'm sort of playing and then like just dropping it into the water, and it kind of has this kind of weird sound. And everything just sounds sort of subaquatic, and it's kind of cool. But I think working with underwater microphones, doing things that are there's just so many things you can try and do. I suppose that's why maybe why my stuff sounds kind of eclectic, and why that quote is, you know, at the beginning where you said the BBC person said I'm unpredictable, is probably why. Yeah.
Well, it sounds kind of like you enjoy being like a sound scientist, like sort of concocting all these
I feel
sounds.
like a scientist in this thing. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm in the lab.
You are. You're making new things and amazing sounds. I mean, what is the weirdest situation you've been in where you're like, I'm actually, you know, like when you're in the bath making sounds using the harmonica and things like that. What's the weirdest thing that you've done in that respect?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that was kind of a weird day. Because I had 2 cats as well, and they were just like, what the hell is going on? And they keep coming in, and, you know, you've got a £1,000 computer in the bathroom where everything's wet. And I was just like, this is weird. You know, this is a recipe for disaster. The cats jumping around and trying to record stuff. So, yeah, that was quite a fun day. But other than that, I guess, like, one of the dancier tracks, which I haven't played today, but it's very, very dancey, and it kind of got picked up for loads of stuff that is sort of beyond my scene. It's much more like heavy bass, like people. Is that track? The top line is all like the snare and hi-hats and stuff, all made of dry pasta. And I just think it's really funny because none of them know that, and it's like they take it really seriously. They're like, oh yeah, this tune, and it's like
Dancing to pasta. Yeah. Nice. I like that. And I heard the audio of your grandma in there, and it was really, because I know that the story behind it's really touching to hear her and the music. And I kind of, when I was listening to it, I was thinking this is kind of like having sort of different generations together in one music that's being played at the present. How do you feel about having your grandma in your music?
I really like it because I think her sort of madness comes across in it, and I really like that. She's just wild and very interesting person, and it feels like sharing something very real. So I suppose I don't sing like live or have lyrics. So in terms of communicating something human in a way that we sort of understand, having words or vocals from somebody is kind of useful. And that's why those 2 kids as well in the one of the tracks before, where they're playing shopkeeper, they're friends of the family, and that I really like having them in it because, again, they communicate something that I wouldn't be able to, and also I don't, because I don't choose to, you know, have lyrics or anything in my music. So, yeah, it makes it more personal, I think. Yeah,
It's really beautiful to hear. It really is. This is probably one of the last questions I'm going to ask, actually, but I'm interested to know if you came up against any obstacles as a musician, because it is really hard, and Bristol is so swamped with so many musical artists, and there's a lot happening. Has there ever been a point where you were just like, I actually can't do this. This is not going to happen?
yeah, all the time. Like, lots. I suppose I've been active on the scene like for a few years, but in those years there've been blocks of 6 months or even a year where I've gone, no, I can't do it. It's too. It's very, very demanding of so many different skills if you're doing it in the way that I'm doing it, which is self-releasing and self-promoting and self-booking and writing and doing everything. It's a lot. So I suppose there's that kind of obstacle. But then there's other obstacles like kind of trying to break through as a solo artist and solo female artist. I think now is maybe a bit easier, but 4 or 5 years ago wasn't very easy at all. And it's funny because now there are all these schemes and things in place to help women be visible. It's actually like, I feel like I've not missed the boat with it, but I was doing it a little bit before, which kind of feels frustrating because now actually there's just loads and loads of people doing really great stuff, which is cool. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think anybody likes to be given an opportunity because they are women. I think that kind of sucked, but also, yeah, it was a massive barrier for me. Just getting bookings, even turning up to shows. I quite often had this thing where I'd turn up to shows and the sound engineer wouldn't talk to me or know who I was, or not that they should know who I am, but I'd introduce myself and they would dismiss me straight away and not talk to me. And I just found that really hard work to then, you know, go up on stage. And actually, if I was ever with anybody, like a friend, they'd always just talk to them, assuming it was a bloke. I had that so much, so I found those things very, very difficult. And now I work with Jason, who, when we're doing a visual show, again, I turn up, sound engineers won't talk to me, they will go straight to him. And he'll say, oh, I don't do anything with sound. And they're like, oh, just tell me what you need. He's like, I don't know. Like, he actually doesn't know. We're a great team because I don't know what he really needs, and I don't know, you know. But it's kind of, that is hard, especially when you're like, I've worked for years to get to this point, to play this festival. Can you please just treat me like a person or a performer or whatever? But so yeah, there's definitely that obstacle. So yeah, there have been many challenges, but I'm still glad that I'm doing it.
And when you did come up an obstacle that maybe you felt like you weren't creatively able to make anything, how would you overcome those moments?
I think getting re-inspired by other things is the best way. So, but I find there's so much music and we're bombarded with so much stuff all the time, that actually going and looking at other music isn't very helpful, because I just think, oh, I'm never going to make anything that good, or, you know, there's so much music, I don't really need to add any more to what's out there. So actually I find going to look at, you know, like go to a gallery or go to an installation, go to visual art is a way for me to get re-inspired in terms of audio-wise, which is kind of, or, you know, going into nature, that's a really good one. Just leaving the city, basically, where there's more space. I think there's more time to think, maybe.
I feel like a lot of people do use the natural world to like inspire them, I guess, because there's so much happening around you in a city. It's almost like a bombardment of the senses. It's quite hard to think almost sometimes in the city. Do you have any gigs and releases coming out that people should come and check out and see you play live again?
My next show's in London. I'm doing an in-store at Novation, which is like a weird one. It's like they make stuff, and like this, they make this, but I'm going to go and do a gig there. So I don't really know how that will be. But in terms of Bristol, I haven't got anything lined up or announced yet, but I think there might be something later in the year to sort of finish the year off. And release-wise, again, I've just had the release out on Brownswood, which was that track All the Glimmering, which I played earlier. And other than that, there's nothing. There's something new in the pipeline, but again, it's not been announced yet. So I guess it's just a case of looking out for that in a few weeks.
It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you perform, and I want to see you again. And again and again, and I want to see you do live stuff as well with AV. It's been absolutely amazing. Can everyone put your hands together, please, for Kayla? Now we wanted to give an opportunity for the audience to ask any questions. So if you would like to ask a question, we have one taker there. Then yeah, just put your hands up.
So one of the themes, both in the music and the chat around the music, has been around communication. I wanted to ask a bit of an open question about the role of communication in your music, and specifically there was a track you played just before the Sellotape one, where there are these wonderful glitchy sounds that were very similar for me to the sound of an old dial-up modem. And it just reminded me a little bit of, it just made me think of what would we mainly communicate via apps these days, from more than speaking, and it just made me think, what does our sort of communication sound like? And they're almost sort of creating these sort of digital glitchy ghosts who have a sort of life and spirit of their own. So that was more of an open question, really.
I think that's really interesting that you kind of picked up on that. I think those might have been sounds from the Delia Derbyshire track, possibly. So I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to work with some of Delia Derbyshire's samples. I think that's those kind of old sounds, potentially, which was amazing. And they do have that quality to them. You can really hear that they're dated, and I love that about it. But in terms of kind of communication and what that might sound like, I think it's really interesting to kind of reference the past, like modems, glitchy. You know, when the internet, I remember when people started to get the internet at home. You know, I remember when we got the internet at home, and you'd spend forever waiting for something to download for 4 days, like on LimeWire. You know, you'd wait for a track. It was so rubbish, wasn't it? But and now everything's so instant and clean and fast and whatever. I mean, maybe that is something to think about when kind of creating music, you know, in that way. I don't know, I just think that's a really interesting point. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't really answer anything, but yeah.
I Would anyone else like to ask a question?
I think it was interesting what you said earlier about the sound engineer not talking to you, which I find despairing at this time. And when I listen to male electronic music, I was at Boomtown last night, and the electronic rave area, it's very masculine. It's very, the beats have a kind of, they repeat themselves, and then things get layered on top, and they just reinforce something that was there at the beginning, whereas you seem to go on a journey. Do you think that we have to think about those two things, or are there lots of different myriad ways of doing all of that? Good question.
I think, I think it's a good question. I think I like to be more collagey with my work because I feel like I'm telling some kind of story. However, I would say that's probably done me a disservice or stopped me from getting into certain clubs like this, as in like, I mean more kind of metaphorically, like a gang of kind of producers, or a style, a scene that I can't get into. And yeah, I know what you mean about the repetitive nature of dance music in certain ways and the kind of masculinity behind that. I think there are some interesting producers and DJs coming through that aren't necessarily male. There's still a long way to go, but I suppose it's like a different kind of scene, and I'm not sure how. Part of me wants to go there, but part of me enjoys doing this stuff where it's more communicative and collagey. Again, though, I've had feedback from labels and stuff going, if you just put a 4/4 underneath this, or if you just do this, then it will be that. And sometimes I think I won't always disregard what they say, because sometimes it's good to try things out. But sometimes I just think, I'm in this niche, and I want people to join me in this niche, not have to leave this niche, so that I can continue doing what I'm doing to a wide audience. So, yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions from anyone?
Are there any sounds that you really can't stand that you've possibly sampled and made real nice into your tracks?
What do you mean, like ones that?
To say like someone kind of bite metal when they eat, or like,
I see.
Like something that kind of gets you.
I do really hate that sound of like nails on a blackboard sort of thing, and I really hate the kind of texture of things like that. So like, if you've ever caught your nail on like paint or on plaster, that kind of texture and sound I really can't stand. I like to have sounds that feel kind of rounded, but then you've also kind of got glitchy. Yeah, the glitchy high stuff I really like. So some of the glitchy things you hear probably aren't even high at all to start with. They might be much lower sounds that I pitched, and yeah.
I think my question was more like, so you get a sound that you really can't stand.
Yeah.
Have you ever kind of someone to make it nice so it's like
Yeah.
so you can kind of maybe get over the fact that you
That I
don't
don't like it. I don't think I have done that. Probably no, because I tend to only hit record when I'm like, yes, I love this sound. No, so probably not. But it would be an interesting thing to try. Thanks.
I'm just really interested to know how you got from your playing the saxophone in your school lessons to composing on a laptop. How did you make that jump? And did you get formal education in that, or were you just self-taught?
It's a good question. I'm self-taught in this stuff, but sort of. But so the way it happened was I went to university. I progressed from playing saxophone to playing bass guitar. Then was a bassist for a few years, quite a few years, in bands and stuff. Went to university, hoping I could just play bass and be a female bass player, which was also very rare at the time, or maybe still is, I don't know. And when I got to university, I guess I hadn't really read the prospectus very well, and they kind of said, everybody leave your instruments here, and they kind of led us outside, and they were like, go into those skips and grab things that you like the sound of, or think you might like the sound of. And then after we went skip diving, we went into a workshop and created our own instruments out of junk. It sounds very like Stomp, but it wasn't. It was much more academic. And then I spent 3 years. It was basically like an art school. I mean, it was a university, but it had an art school vibe to it. So we were learning about philosophy of sound, and we were learning about semiotics and structuralism and post-structuralism and just mind-blowing stuff alongside skip diving and creating music without musical instruments. And so we were told to sort of reject our instruments, which was really hard for like a year. And then the second year, I just thought, I hate all music. I can't be bothered with this. And then in the third year, I had a project and I decided to try and look at working on a laptop. And that's where that started. So I would say that it was I kind of put it down to the lecturer I had, who was very inspiring. He gave me the nudge to continue doing that kind of laptop stuff. And I think that's where that came from.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming down today. It's been really lovely. It's been really nice to have the sound of the rain in the background as well. It's been absolutely amazing, Kayla. Can everyone put your hands together, please, for Kayla?
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.